Welcome to Backboard Banter on the board with your hosts, Matt Middleton and Kevin Rayner, where the banter's as ferocious as my feelings for the Montreal Canadiens management right now, man. Like, I get taking David Reinbacher. He's, a very, very solid prospect. He could turn out to be a top pairing right shot defenseman, and those guys don't grow on trees. But when you have the chance to take the best Russian prospect since Alexander Ovechkin, and his numbers actually compare favorably to Alexander Ovechkin,
I mean,
you do it. You just do it. Who cares if he takes 3 years to get here? We're not going to be good for the next 3 years, anyways.
uh,
Just
welcome to the
mind blown.
off season, everyone. You can tell where we are. There's moves happening. Fans are over here praying that this season will be this season finally. Hopefully we'll get some positive Habs development for Matt in the future, but no, not at this moment. Not at this moment, from what we're hearing.
Bro, they took four goalies in this draft.
Who?
Four.
Somebody is coping and trying to replace a certain
Carey
goaltender in
Price.
their life. Like, come on,
Bro.
guys.
Whatever, man. It is what
Pain.
it is. Yeah.
Look. Hey, think about it this way, okay? The Habs not so great. Positivity. The Nuggies absolutely nailed it for you. They got their championship. They did it a couple of weeks ago now. Everything's just been sizzling, but that Nuggets team absolutely dominated. They had a pretty banger parade to celebrate afterwards. A lot of good times in the Mile High, that's for sure.
Yeah, man. Nikola Jokic realized why people like to stay for the parade and just don't go right back home to Serbia, right? No, it was good. They're well deserving. It was an easy pick. Come on, man. Like even when the Heat won that second game, I knew from the onset that okay, you won on 48% shooting from three and you barely eked that out. Chances are you're going to win the series. Next to none.
Tough series for the Heat to pull out. Proud of Spoelstra and the boys for getting one. Now they have to, roll back, reset, try to figure out how they can get back to here next time. Preferably an easier route, not as the, eighth or seventh seed that they ended up having to go through themselves. So yeah, but when it comes to the Nuggets, conversations of a dynasty, conversations of where they can go. We'll talk about Bruce Brown because he probably ain't coming back, but Mike Malone was saying that we're running it back. Potentially one of the greatest, all-time coach parade moments in Mike Malone. That guy, sorry, Michael Malone. I can't disrespect the championship coach over here, but I mean, what do you say about this Nuggets team, Matt? Pretty proud of all of these guys to come together. Legendary old heads like Ish Smith and Jeff Green getting rings finally. Like, it's a pretty fantastic storyline all around.
No, man, it was great. And it's funny because Michael Porter Jr. had like a pretty mundane series, and then in game 5, like really helped them out to win that game. Um, didn't feel like Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray really had it. Like they couldn't buy a bucket, man. Like it was crazy the amount of threes that they missed, the open shots that they just bricked. And like Michael Malone said it, he was like, we were tight. They were very tight. They were nervous, like they had a shot at it, and the Heat almost capitalized on taking them out. That ending, I mean, NBA, can you be less obvious about trying to rig the games to go more? Like that kick, like so Aaron Gordon fouled him with his junk. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. But hey, the Nuggets ended up winning. Aaron Gordon getting touted out as the third best player on this team. When I feel like on any given night it was multiple different guys. I feel like Aaron Gordon definitely stepped up the most in the finals. I mean next to Bruce Brown, but yeah, like that's just like the beauty of winning an NBA championship if you're like a role guy is that you get to like get all this praise and
Yeah.
everyone talks about how integral and how pivotal you were and don't get me wrong he was and he played amazing in the finals but man like can we like understand that he was the third best option on that team that like Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic are the
Yeah.
reasons that we're talking about the Nuggets at all.
it's fun to celebrate these guys though, because we lived through the era of the super teams of Golden State where there's so many good players and LeBron would drag whoever in his drag us through, and now we've seen these teams where it comes to certain guys at the right moment stepping up to be the role player. We saw Drew Holiday help the Bucks. Should I say Anthony Davis helping LeBron? That we can say that was just a LeBron anomaly his time, but you think about the additions with Aaron Gordon, you think about the additions of Andrew Wiggins, right? Like, I'm interested to see if that can continue over the next few years, or if the CBA and the changes, for example, will stop it from having such an impactful third player, and if it really will be down to these, plethora of role players coming in to step up and be that role. Like, it'll be interesting to see how the dynamic of these storylines come down to with these championship caliber teams.
No, man, like we've talked about before, the middle class of the NBA is definitely going to shrink with the new CBA, and you're going to have to definitely, earmark that money for the right players. Because if you give it to the wrong guy who's not at that level, it's not like it used to be. It's going to be a lot more punitive. And I also do want to shout out the fact that Aaron Gordon was just a boss celebrating with fans in the street without his
Dude,
shirt on, just still in his game shorts and shoes. Like it was awesome, man. I really love that one.
he had to match the Michael Malone coach energy. But yeah, I was as an Aaron Gordon fan who was talking about this playoff run. I was really happy to see him come out and dominate this Miami Heat team in the way that he should. But then also still just casually being a role player later on in the series, like a guy who figured out how to kind of have it all at this point. But your point to talking about salaries and paying certain guys, I think rolls perfectly into Raps Chat this time. Our first real good conversation of a Raps Chat that we've gotten to have in a while, because we have some decisions to make. Not us, obviously, the front office, but we have to figure out where the money's going to land, who's going to have the minutes, who's going to have the ball in their hands. And as of tomorrow night, the ball might drop with the man Fred VanVleet himself, the perfect place to start. A guy who was looking for the bag, and who Matt and I both do not want to pay that absolute bag because it just ain't worth it for what he can provide.
Look, man, I saw something recently from like Twitter, NBA Twitter, where he's shooting like 38% on field goal attempts since he was an all-star, since that 2022 All-Star game. So almost a full season and a a little bit over a quarter, maybe a third. That is awful. That is horrific. And
Yeah,
you're looking to pay him $40 million. And now I don't even think the market would truly be there for a guy like Fred VanVleet, but because teams want those trade chips for max guys, a team like Houston is definitely offering him that 2 year, $80 million contract, because at the end of it, mid-season trade
yeah.
deadline, they can trade him and he's an expiring contract. He can make it work. Even if they keep him for the full season next year, he's a very expiring contract. And so they can make money work. They can pair it with their younger players. Maybe Jabari Smith or Green doesn't work out, and they just go out and they pair him with Freddie to get a superstar.
Yeah.
That is totally plausible. And I really think that like Fred, he's going to get the bag, but he's got to be careful because he will get traded if he goes to a place like Houston.
It's a safe bet for Houston, but is it a safe bet for Fred at the end of the day as the man who bets on himself? So it'll
Well,
be
80 million.
I mean, this like what? But the reason he would take the 80 million 2 years is that he can secure another bag on the other side of 30 in the right place, right? And so it's like, is that the right
Ooh.
bet for himself, or is that the Houston gets to take advantage and then ship him wherever? Whereas coming back to the Raptors would provide a longer, maybe not that total value, because we would be like, Fred, come on, help a brother out, help these guys out. But this is where we don't really know exactly where things are going to land. But when it comes to our roster, I don't think any more decisions are made until Fred's decision is made at the end of the day.
Yeah, he's definitely holding us up. And I think that like, the $80 million is great for him. Absolutely. And if he gets, the bag on the other side,
Yeah.
I would be shocked. we've talked about it, man. The way that he's played, the way that he's been kind of driven into the ground by Nick Nurse a little bit. Maybe it'll be different in a different situation, but he's a smaller point guard who plays heavy minutes and plays you know, a a heavy style, man, on his
Yeah,
body. It's a lot of, doing what Kyle used to do and taking charges and playing hard on defense. And I just don't know how well he's going to hold up if his body's already kind of broken down at 29. And in 2 years, he's going to be,
yeah, true.
definitely on the wrong side of 30. Most NBA players exit their peaks at 32, 33 years old. And so, what team is going to be looking at him and giving him max money? And now the CBA is going to be fully baked in, and there are going to be teams who are just not willing to give any kind of mid-level to him. And he could be looking at bargain basement money. So I mean, he could come to the Raptors and stay on a 5-year contract, and we could give him good money over that 5 years, or he could bet on himself and see where it goes. And I'm assuming he's going to do the latter. But
Track
I'd be
record.
scared of him to do it. Yeah, if I was
Yeah.
him.
I mean, it's a tough situation, and Fred's going to have to follow his heart. It's why we think he's going to take the money because he has that track record of betting on himself.
Hmm.
But I mean, hey, don't we kind of have his replacement with our 5'8" undrafted guy? Yo, when I heard we took
McGee's
Noel, I thought to myself, I know this name from somewhere, and then obviously everyone
the
remembers the
tournament.
the viral clip of the guy arguing with his coach and then setting up the absolute banger of an alley-oop dunk. But could he be the next Fred VanVleet? With our organization, anything's possible. But at this point, I mean, I'm kind of done with Fred. I love Fred. I'm happy with Fred and what he's done, but it's time. It's time to move on at this point. It really is.
Yeah, unless he comes back for a really great contract,
Which he
like it's
won't.
just not. Yeah, either sign and trade him, or Gabe Vincent's a good option. Couple years younger, very similar stories. Work themselves into the players that they are today, and he played so well in the first 3 games of the NBA Finals that people had him as a NBA
Man's
Finals MVP candidate. So,
Man's been making $4 million a year. I'm happy to pay him 10, 12 million a couple of years. He can do good things for us on that kind of money for
bro,
sure.
even 15, like, for 3, 4 years, like that's not the worst thing for him. Give Grady some time to get in there, give Noel some time to get in there and figure that one out, man. I'd also be interested in like a Fred VanVleet sign and trade for, Norman Powell and Terrence Mann. Anybody?
I did. You messaged me that, and I thought to myself, we got a Norman-sized Powell hole in our Toronto Raptors team. Who wouldn't be happy to see the Norm God back? I mean, if the Bucks figure themselves out, I'd sleep a lot better at night with Norm God coming off the bench against that team. Matt knows how I feel that way. But it's everything's kind of up in the air. Gary Trent Jr. staying on, taking that option, and the rumors of him
Um,
wanting to sign an extension is great, especially when we get into talking about Darko in the future of where our offense could go. Like, I think Gary is sold on what the Raptors are selling, even though the Raptors kind of don't really know what they're selling at this point in time. Gary is looking through that, and he's thinking, I had not to disrespect Portland, but like Gary did not have a good time in Portland. He said it himself. He wasn't feeling appreciated. He wasn't happy with his time there, and I don't think Gary wants to roll the dice again on another franchise. I think Gary has found something that he's comfortable with, and he wants to let himself continue to grow. And when I think about Darko and the way that he's reaching out to players, the way that he wants to play a system, I think Gary could have an absolutely fantastic season ahead of him.
could I also say that like there's no other spot in the NBA where he's going to face as little competition at the guard spot than the Toronto
True.
Raptors?
Yeah.
Like how many teams are as depleted at the guard spot as the Raptors are, especially if we don't have Fred VanVleet coming back. So he could take over as the primary guard. Now, obviously, I don't think that he's going to be handling a lot of the play setting up duties. It'll definitely be between Scotty and Siakam at that point. But I mean, heck, man, like he may as well stay. And I think that he probably could have opted out and gotten a little bit more money and a little bit more security. But I think what he really wants to do this year is prove that he's a max money kind of player.
True.
And I think that's his goal. And I think that, why would he sign like a 3-year contract and kick that can down the line if he can prove it this year. And I think that he has full confidence in his abilities. I think that he has full confidence in the fact that, Darko's going to be hopefully running a more cohesive offense, a more sharing offense, as opposed to what Nick Nurse ran, which, we were the number, like, I think we were top five in isolation plays run as a team, and we were bottom five in points per isolation possession. And
Pain.
so, like, bro, but like that goes back to coaching. Like, you got to
Yeah.
know your guys. You got to know what's going on, and you got to see that stat midway through the season and be like, okay, we got to revamp this offense because it's clearly not working by giving Scotty, or I mean, by giving Siakam and by giving Fred VanVleet opportunities to just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. We
Right.
need to be more cohesive. And I loved the Darko presser where he's talking about the ball moving around constantly, and if a shooter misses, it's, you just keep encouraging him. You keep passing him the ball if it's an open shot, if he's taking the right shot.
Shoot or
And I think
shoot.
that's music to a lot of players' ears, and especially like you said, shooter shoot. And Gary Trent's a shooter, man. I
Yeah.
mean, he's a scorer. He can do a lot, but we want him for that three ball. So hopefully it all works out, man. Because man, I like Gary. I think he's underappreciated on defense, and he's a lot better of a scorer than people give him credit for. So
And he's still young enough to continue to thrive, and he fits Scotty's timeline, which is so important. And I think it's time to flip to talking about Grady now. You talk about the competition, and it comes down to Grady really at this point in time. And we want shooters around Scotty. If anything about, a Giannis archetype type player. Not that Scotty is that, but in terms of he hasn't proven yet that his 3-point shot can fall down. So we have to rely on everything else at this point in time. And how you succeed with that is you get knockdown shooters. And Grady is setting himself up to potentially be that guy next to Scotty. I love the vibes that I see out of this kid, the way that the two of them are together. The fact that
bro,
Scotty's vibe was Magic Johnson, that was his, person he looks up to, and the fact that Grady looks up to Bird and Steph Curry, it's like, have we got these two kids that are ready to have something special together? Like, I'm really looking forward to see what this can be.
yeah, I'm nervous.
Sure.
I do like the Grady dick pic. That's such a funny sentence. But I loved his suit, the ruby red, and the fact that he got drafted at the Raptors, like, all worked out. But
Yeah.
hey, man, he hasn't done anything yet as of yet. But I have got, high hopes for him. I'm going to give him a lot of leeway to grow into it. He doesn't have to come out onto the scene and light the world on fire, but
Right.
knock down your shots in your minutes. He's got the purest shot in the draft, so that was nice. And his mom was a big time basketball player,
Yep.
and he's been shooting from a young age, and she taught him how to shoot properly, right? Like, start with the smaller ball and then work your way up. So I hope it all works out, man.
He's respectful as well. I think he's actually more respectful than Scotty. Scotty definitely has the bigger ego, but I mean, are we surprised by this at the end of the day? But I will say shout out to Scotty, he did the classic rookie thing and bought his mom a car recently. The video was pretty great and pretty hilarious. But yeah, man, the
Yeah,
vibes. That's, you talk about, isn't that Darko's buzzword? Isn't it vibes or whatever it is?
yeah, yeah.
But I'm looking forward to see what this team comes together. And, I think the last real free agent to talk about that we haven't really discussed yet before we really dive into Darko is with Jakob. What's going to happen with the Pirtle? Obviously him and Siakam are best buds, right? They're real tight. They're real close. He's come out and said that he doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild. Now, is that just him leaning into his leverage? Because let's be real here. If Yak has to be aware of the fact that he knows the leverage that he has. We can't afford to not bring him back, but also, like, depending on the direction we go, like, can we afford to bring him back? Like, the only worry that I have is
Oh,
that this is going to turn into the "we told you so" situation when it comes to people thinking about the trade that happened just a little while ago for this guy.
yeah. I think that's exactly what it is. It's we shouldn't have done that. We should have last year realized that we were not going to be a competitive team,
Right.
and we should have just held on to that first round pick, because the fact that it's going to the Spurs next year. I mean, barring a top 10 bottom finish, which I think is possible if we don't bring him back and we don't bring Fred VanVleet back and we trade Siakam.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, we could hit another top 10 pick, but I don't think that's the direction that we really want to go. And I think the fact that, I would like to give him, a very similar contract as to what Boots just got, a $20 million a year contract, keep him on the team. I think that he adds, that consistent center position. I don't think that he's a top 10 center like Masai said, but definitely top 15 in the NBA.
for
That's
sure.
for sure.
For sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
he can battle with the
I'd like to keep
best,
him.
but he can't compete with the elite, right? Like at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Like he can definitely take on like DeAndre Ayton, but and that's another like possibility that we could do, right? We could maybe do a sign and trade with Yak and add in, maybe an Otto Porter Jr. or a Malachi Flynn or a Chris Boucher or maybe even a Precious and get a DeAndre Ayton back and have DeAndre Ayton as our center. And now I know that he's like, that type of guy that wants to be a part of the offense, but I mean, if it's him, Scotty, Grady Dick, and OG on the court, and we've traded Siakam and Fred VanVleet's gone, and
Yeah.
Gary Trent Jr.'s the other guy, like that's enough, between the five of them to be a good starting five.
Yeah.
And they're all young, under the age of 26. Like that's a good team to build with, man. From there,
And the my favorite point about that is you brought up OG Anunoby, who we've seemingly let go under the radar in this conversation so far because a player that we both love. I mean, I'm just waiting for him to sign a long-term extension before I go buy an OG jersey because I'm a big OG
same, bro.
fan, but scary to think that maybe he doesn't want to be here, maybe he does want that bigger role. Fact of the matter is if we don't get rid of Siakam, if we don't move off Fred, there isn't a ton of space unless Darko has the movement that we're expecting out of it. But yeah, DeAndre Ayton would fit great as long as, again, Fred and Siakam aren't there to take up this ball movement. Like, we're just coming full circle again and again, Matt. Like, this is just where we are.
Well, I think I have been saying since the beginning of our podcast that Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam can't be a part of this team's future if this team wants to win a championship. That we needed to extract assets and value out of them. I thought last year was the perfect time. We had a NBA all NBA player and an all star. But I also see the value in keeping them. So I understand why Masai did it. I personally never ever believed that with the two of them at the helm we could do it. And I think that like that's I guess better perspective from being outside the building, not seeing them every day, not understanding how
Of
hard they
course.
work, not all of that. But yeah, I think it's fully coming to a head at this point. And I saw this tweet that said that like if we lose Fred VanVleet for nothing in the free agency period, it'll be Ibaka, Gasol, Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green, and Fred VanVleet, all
Wow.
from that championship team. No, nothing coming back in value. Not
Dang.
one single set.
And
That's how you go from a championship team to the bottom of the league. Masai?
and
Sorry.
no, but to add to that, like you're right, but also the fact that we've been treading water as well as we have, considering all of that fact, because
Yeah.
obviously a bunch of it is not doing the due diligence with the front office, but also we're the Raptors, man. We don't get the respect. It's Toronto. People don't want to pay our taxes. There's so many factors to it, but man, that hurts to hear a list like that. But yeah, man, let's go into a rebuild. Let's let the guys walk. Let's bring in D Rose, and if Miami cuts Kyle Lowry, let's let him come back. They can be our veteran boys to come off the bench while Grady and Scotty figure it out. Like, let's have some fun if we're gonna have to roll that way. Get that 10th pick back to us.
Bro, I don't even care if we're trying to run it back. If the Miami Heat cut Kyle Lowry, he's got to be a Raptor.
Come
Like, he's
on.
got to be a Raptor. Come on. Come back, retire with us after next season. It would make all of Canada just so happy.
I
It would.
mean, like we're talking about pure glory if that happens, but we've we've got summer league coming up. Darko's gonna have his chance to see if he can get this offense rolling through the boys. And I don't want to say too much about Darko. I think we can talk about him a little bit more when we see what summer league can happen. But we're both excited about what he can bring. We've mentioned it. We've poked at it here and there. And his vibes, man, his vibes are pretty good. And if he can get the right staff together, and if Scotty can buy in, and if the boys are ready, I mean, we're hoping for some positivity in the next few months. That's for sure.
Yeah, I just hope that he can get the team to be a cohesive unit. That's really because like I think the entire theme of our podcast from this past year has been, man, the Raptors are so talented, but don't want to work together. Man, the Raptors have so many good players, but none of them seem to be on the same night. Like
I
it
mean,
was all a disjointed team that led to this season. Really.
it's vindicating when you hear the reports that the team was not together as early as December. Nick wasn't having it as early as December, that we were aware of it and we were kind of watching it happen from the outside looking in. And
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, this is the reset button, right? That's why the coach honeymoon phase is what it is. And if things can come
Mhm.
together, maybe we won't be too far away from the Miami Heat that Masai thinks we are. But yeah, man, we'll see. Summer League games around the corner, second week of July. We'll see what the young rooks can do for us.
Man, I think it's going to be a great summer league. I think Grady Dick is going to hit so many three pointers. It's going to be outrageous. So hopefully that's what comes true. And I'm a happy camper.
The 12-year-old Raptors fans on forums with their dick jokes are just not good, kids. You got to stop, guys. We love Grady, but I mean, he seems to embrace it. Like, let's be honest, we love the number one pick. Everyone's joking around here. Let's be real. We all know what he's going for here at this point. So
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and the chance that other teams are gonna give him. Apparently, he's the type of player who he enjoys that. He wants that. He wants you to get in his face because it raises his level. And hearing that, that's exactly what I want to hear about a player. Is that when enemy fans are chanting your name, are
yeah,
aggressive towards you, are telling you you suck, you come out and you hit that shot, and then you just let's hear it, guys. Let's hear it. Come at me,
he's got
because
he's got the Larry Bird energy for
that's
that,
swag.
man.
That's
That's
swag.
that's where it comes from for me. So let's roll on a rap chat. Let's talk about this draft because like everyone was expecting Wemby to go first, but a lot of people that are going to be yelling negative things towards that second pick. Miller. He's gonna have to be able to have that same feeling of shutting out the crowd and putting up and performing because every guy that goes in the top parts of the draft believes in themselves that they can be, that number one pick, that number two pick, that number three pick. But with the Hornets and the situation of picking for fit, he's going to have to step up and prove that it was worth it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one, man. I'm definitely not you draft for fit. Like clearly with the Montreal Canadiens, like you don't draft for fit, you draft for talent and you figure out the fit later. Because if you draft enough talent, there's always talent to be traded for. There's always, fit to be had. So yeah, I would have taken Scoot Henderson if I was Charlotte. LaMelo has already proven that he's had some injuries. His brother has proven that, you could really break down as a ball.
Yeah.
So why not get a backup policy, a guy who we've seen his archetype work in the NBA. I mean, no, it's never won a championship, but it's definitely been that type of player who can be the second best player on a championship team. So to me, I think it was a little bit of a wasted pick on their part, but hey, they seem to think that Brandon Miller has the same kind of ceiling that Scoot Henderson does, and that's their prerogative.
It was just another one of those picks that made this a fun draft. Honestly, the fact of all the different movement that we got to see, the Thompson twins going back to back, which will be really cool for them. I think, in the future, as brothers. At the same time, I think about where we were at 13, the fact that Cam Whitmore was available and seemingly fell to the Rockets at 20, which could mean one thing, but also, when a lottery pick falls out of the top 15 and goes to a team like the Rockets, who are just waiting for guys to step up and be readily available. That's a potential recipe for serious success. So there's a lot that is going to come out of this draft. 5, 10 years from now, people looking back at it, there's enough talent spread out through here that some of these guys have some potential to be a part of the next face of the league that we're seemingly getting into.
Well, yeah, I mean, Wemby is everybody's, darling pick. I'm just I'm nervous about him because he's quite slight.
Yeah.
And I mean, for the knockdown shooter that he is, he hasn't cracked 30% in France. So, I mean, look, man, people get really, really hyped up about prospects like him, and I think that he could be amazing. I also think that there is a higher chance than typical that he could be a bust.
I mean, this is where it gets an interesting conversation, right? Because like as basketball fans, like both of us want Wemby to reach his potential because of how great that will be for the game. But also, I know Matt. I know this guy. He's real about life. He understands the fact that we're all just, struggling to survive. We're all just fighting it to get through here. So he's going to look at least the other side of it. And when it comes to big men in the past and what we've seen in this league, you have to be cautious. You have to be ready. We're all waiting for Chet Holmgren to come back and have a good rookie of the year potentially campaign coming up to fight Wemby,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like he could be 2 weeks into the season and fall down and break another big bone and he's out, right? Like this is what happens with big, tall, lanky guys in the NBA. People love Yao Ming for what he did in the league. I'm sorry, how long was his career? Injuries do what they do. It's just a fact for these guys.
No, absolutely. And when you typically draft at the top of the draft for size as opposed to like talent, which I'm not saying that he wasn't the most talented
Of
player,
course.
but you do get into trouble. I mean, look as recently as DeAndre Ayton over Luka Doncic. They drafted for size and that big center position.
And
That's
that
what they
Texas
wanted.
fit.
And again, not going with a guard heavy player or ball dominant player because you already have a ball dominant player in Devin Booker. But I'm sure the Suns, if you ask them today if they could go back and redo that pick, they're taking Luka Doncic hands down, no questions asked. So, like that's the thing that I get into, and I'm not saying that Wemby wasn't the most skilled player because looking at his tape, like he is just so skilled for that size.
Yeah.
But again, the caveat is for that size. And I mean, it might work out. He might be amazing, but he could also, like you said, and like I've insinuated, run into a Joel Embiid and get broken.
Mm, so true.
So,
But hey, you know what? Worst case scenario, it was all worth it for that photo of him standing next to Timmy, to the Admiral, to Mono. That kid is towering above some of the greatest big men this NBA has ever seen. Like a wild photograph, man.
bro, when they start lying about your height, the down direction or the up direction, it's sketchy.
Absolutely wildly crazy. So, we'll be sure to review this draft in the years to come. There's a lot of interesting names that are going to come out. Everyone's waiting to see if they can find the next Nikola Jokic of the second round. But free agency, baby, the last part of this pod that we got to talk about today starts tomorrow night. And as we've learned in recently with free agency, it actually started about a week and a half ago, and some deals are potentially already written under the table, and we're just waiting for that deadline to hit so they can be like, hey, I already joined that team. I mean, I'm signing with this team right now. So tomorrow night's going to be, there's going to be some moments. We weren't
Mhm.
expecting that exciting of a free agency. We weren't expecting much to happen. But over the past week
Still
or
not.
two, I mean, yeah, not much. But over the past week or two, let's be fair. There's been some names that have showed up. There's been some people that have declined some options. There are not any needle movers, but there's a couple of good players that are available. There's a couple of pieces that could be the right fit to help your team be competitive. So Matt, where do you want to start? Who do you want to talk about? What's interesting in your mind?
Well, I kind of want to like do something that's not in free agency, but has happened recently and moved around is the CP3 to the Warriors. Because I think that was a desperation move by a dynastic franchise that is
Yeah.
trying to keep it going. And I think that when you get into moves like that, when you're making it for desperation's sake, it's an issue. Um, I think Jordan Poole isn't even, that much worse than CP3 is at the moment. He gives you a lot more energy. He gives you a lot more points. No, he's not the floor general that CP3 is. And no, he's not as mature. And yes, Jordan Poole was kind of a cancer in that locker room. All of the things that came out of the whole Draymond Green punch situation. But man, you couldn't get anything better than CP3, who's like he's broken at this point, man. He's gonna be 30, what, 9?
Yeah.
He- What's he
I
gonna
mean,
do? Like he's gonna carry them for 14 minutes a game? Great. They're still not good. They're
they
still
want
not good enough.
they wanted OG, we wouldn't give it to him. But see, I'm really
That was a joke.
a joy.
That
No,
was like a
I
joke
needed that.
report. Oh,
So
they asked OG and we turned them down. No, duh.
duh. Okay, so I'm slightly conflicted with CP3 because I'm 100% with you. I'm on that train. I agree completely with everything you're saying. But there's still this narrative that exists, which is a narrative, but it's chirping away at the back of my brain. Is that every team that CP3's joined has gotten better? It's had that little bit, and I know that there's things about basketball that happen off the court that enable teams to get over the hump, to go all the way. With that Boston team that existed, right? Like from where they were last season to how far they came back from, the depths that they were at, that involves a lot of off the court basketball things. So I'm not gonna stand here and say that the CP3 decision is an awful, incredibly bad decision. Now, talk to me in a few months. I
I
might
will.
be pulling the rug out under that type of statement, but it might work. The Golden State Warriors have stated and proven now that they are on this veteran train. They want to ride out with Curry. They stand with Draymond. That's the biggest thing that this says, is that they stand with Draymond, and Draymond most likely is coming back for sure at this point, and they're going to give it another go. But your choice of words, desperation, nailed it, because that's where they stand. And if I'm a fan, I'm not feeling good in Golden State.
Absolutely, especially when you're going to pay Draymond Green over 30 plus million dollars to come back. And like the one caveat that I'll say to your CP3 makes every team better is kind of what you talked about the off-court stuff. That's where he has really made the biggest impact on those teams,
Yeah,
right? On those young OKC teams, on the Phoenix Suns. Like, yeah, his on-court play has been awesome, but it's really just the fact that he is a steadying presence in the locker room. They don't need that in Golden State. Like they shouldn't. They've got Steph Curry, they've got Klay Thompson, they've got Draymond Green. So if he can't even be a leader on this team,
true.
because talk about somebody who talks trash. Draymond's gonna probably talk trash to him. Like, we used to beat your butt all the time. And so what's going to, transpire there with CP3 and
Yeah,
that locker room? And is he really gonna be able to make the impact that they're anticipating because he's not the leader anymore? And I think that that's a huge, huge, risk calculation. And I don't know if they got it right. I
it's
really don't.
it's definitely question marks in Golden State right now. And the other side of that trade was Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns, which I think has as many question marks still as well. Because obviously Beal, that man with that no trade clause, well done Bradley Beal. You got to go wherever you wanted. Now you're part of this big four that might be a big three eventually, but for now is a big four that, you know what? Yes, it's a four barrel gun. It's the fourth horseman of weapons right now. It can do whatever it wants. But at the same time, Kevin Durant, I'm sorry, is getting older. Bradley Beal has an injury history in the past. Booker can only do so much, and I mean, Aiden's checked out. Like, this Suns team is selling the future for a chance. And while it may happen, Matt, it's so scary what's happening in Phoenix right now.
Man, Aiton was already upset about the touches that he was getting. And now you've got three ball dominant scores.
Ugh.
Yes, I understand Bradley Beal scored 30 points a game in a couple of seasons. He was on bad Washington Wizards teams where he could put up as many points as he wanted. It's going to be like the same effect with Jordan Poole. I bet you Jordan Poole averages like 25 plus points a game this year, but he's on a loser.
People are joking he's going to win the scoring title on the Wizards. And you know
Yeah.
what? It might happen.
Very well might.
It might
But that
happen.
doesn't make him a good basketball player.
No.
It doesn't make him a winner. And so, like, the fact that, you have three guys that basically do the same thing. They're, shot creators, they're shot makers, and you have them to like different varying degrees of ability, and nobody's really a true defender. Like, yeah, KD's a plus above average defenders. I would say Booker's an average defender. I'd say Beal's slightly below average defender.
Yeah.
Now you got it neutral, like you got an average defense and you're just hoping to outscore people. Like, I don't know about you, man, but we saw in the NBA finals, like, how many games were 120 to 115?
Not
Not
that
one.
many. I don't.
Not one.
I don't think so. Yeah, you're
I
right.
think most of the games were in the 90s, in the low
Yeah,
hundreds.
and 108 at most here or there.
110,
Maybe
I think is
111.
what.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that was a winning score by, double digits. So it's not about the offense that you can score. It's about shutting down the other team when it matters most. And they don't have the requisite guys to do that. So I don't know, man. I wasn't a fan of the move.
I love that the narrative is, oh, this team is a championship team. Yeah, they got 6 players right now, maybe 5 actually under contract. Well, let's talk about them when the season comes around. But yeah, I don't need to say more about the Suns. I really am interested in that Celtics trade. This team selling basically the heart and soul of their franchise. Defensive player of the year, just 2 years ago, for Kristaps Porzingis, who, let's be real, has the potential to be great with the
Yeah.
two J's. Let's be honest. But can that team still thrive without Marcus Smart? It is a very interesting dynamic change that is about to happen in Boston.
Yeah, man. I like the shakeup. And I do like the fact that like Marcus Smart was probably the de facto leader because he'd been on those teams when the Jays showed up.
Yeah.
But now the Jays are definitely gonna have to take more of that ownership. I don't know how great Kristaps fits in the locker room. I know he shoots threes. He
Yeah.
gives, more of a leeway for Robert Williams and gives them different looks, a more offensive look versus a more defensive look. Um, I think like ripping out the heart of your team is hard though, because that's what Marcus Smart was. That's why he was the leader, because
Yeah.
he was the heart. And so now you getting rid of that, and are you going to be as gritty? And that's, that was what got them to the NBA Finals. That's why they were so dominant. I mean, yes, they have offensive talent coming out the wazoo, but man, like it was that gritty defense that got them there. So yeah, it's a weird one, man. I don't know about you, but it has potential to work out, but it has potential to completely backfire.
Absolutely. And the more interesting side is the Grizzlies situation, right? Like, Marcus Smart is the perfect archetype player for the Grizzlies, technically speaking, right? He's everything Dylan
Mhm.
Brooks thought he was in reality, right? And so it could work out great, but also they're going through their own battles with John Morant being suspended 25 plus games. Like, at the end of the day, interesting situation, fun little movement of players around, and we'll see in the future how it affects things down the line.
No, absolutely, man. It's going to be interesting to watch those two teams, and maybe he can, knock some sense into Jaw and keep them afloat while Jaw's out. So that's a
Somebody has
pretty
to.
good option. Man, they're better without Jaw in the last 2 years. So, I mean, who knows?
Jaren
And
Jackson Jr. is the true star of that team. Let's say that.
him and Desmond Bain, bro. Him and Desmond Bain.
Oof.
And I guess we can finally get to free agency. Not that, anything has happened, but lots of rumors. Kyrie's meeting with the Suns, Bruce Brown to the Lakers. Um, I mean, everything's out there. Freddie to the Rockets. There's a lot, twisting in the rumor mill. I'm really hoping that the Raptors just do something in this free agency and, help our team out to make it either better for next year or completely worse and guarantee us a top 5 pick.
I mean, I'm pretty sure something like 50 to 60% of the league has already done something, made some kind of trade or movement this offseason. John Collins is on the Jazz, okay? He's off the Hawks finally. That man was in trade
4
purgatory
years
for
later.
years every time. Yo, you guys want John Collins? Anyway, trade talks,
No.
you pick up the phone and you're like, who's calling us? It's the Atlanta Hawks. You guys want John Collins? Like, for years we've been waiting for it, and he's off the table. So like, Raptors, do something, please. Come on, guys. Like, we want it. We want it bad.
Oh man. Anyways, man, like at least Tobias Harris isn't gonna get traded for a box of crumble cookie, but I liked what he said though. I really liked it because he's right. Like players like him don't grow on trees, and he's a very valuable piece to a championship squad. I would argue that over the past couple of postseasons, he's actually been one of their most impactful playoff players,
I mean,
more than Harden,
I mean,
way more.
that's a whole other conversation, and you know that I agree with you completely. And Tobias has that Chris Middleton steal you a game six archetype player that Matt knows that I love to talk about. And Chris Middleton declining his option. Are you gonna
What?
go join the Rockets? Like, Chris, where's the money for you, man? Where's the money for you? Like, are you gonna force? Are you gonna force Milwaukee to make you pay a ton of money and then not have options to be good, and then you're just gonna let your
Sign and
boy?
trade with Tobias?
Ooh, yo, that would be such a funny flip. And
Tobias and Giannis and Drew Holiday, I think is a legitimate big three.
you know,
I think it is.
you know, it
Yeah.
it would be the most interesting situation of the offseason. I kind of would love the speak into existence moment that we might have just witnessed here, but yeah, man, we're gonna we'll come back to this in a week's time, see where things settle, see where people move. Not much more that I really need to bring up here.
Yeah, man. All I'm gonna say about, the future and my mystic prediction is Grady Dick, Summer League MVP, baby. Over Wemby, over Chet. This man's gonna hit so many threes. I have a feeling. I have a feeling with Darko's offense, it's gonna revolve around him knocking down threes.
I've
And
marked
can't wait for it.
I've marked those dates in the calendar. I'm going to be glued to my screen. Excited to watch and see what this Raptor squad can do. For me, easy prediction here because I know what I would do if somebody was dangling 2 years and $80+ million in front of me. I'd be taking that money. Like generational wealth. I know he's already got it, but Fred wants that money. He's going to take that bag. We'll come back to this in a week's time and see what really happened.
Ah, man. Dang. Bye, Freddie.
It'll be the end of an era, but at this point, you know, our conversation can stop. We can finally stop talking about how it's time to move on, and we can just talk about, oh man, we're a rebuilding team. When are we gonna get to the
What can we
next
get
step?
for Siakam?
Yeah, I mean, then it's all Siakam all the time. But anything else this week, my friend, on your mind?
No, man, you're good to wrap us up.
Perfect. Thanks everybody for being here. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at the Board Sports. Like, subscribe, give us that thumbs up. Check out theboardsports.net for new episodes and blog posts.
And we'll talk to you next time. Banger.